I was looking forward to this match so much. Levi had an awesome performance at the last Polaris event, and his run at the ADCC trials was unreal. And Mateus is the scariest man alive.
Mateus looking like an absolute serial killer.
So I was very curious to see how this match was going to play out, especially knowing that Levi is working with Lachlan. And going into it, a lot of people, including myself, were expecting a Berimbolo leg lock shootout.
Don't any of you have the guts to play for blood?
I'm your huckleberry. That's just my game.
Similar to what we saw in the matchup between Cade and Tommy, where Cade likes to counter leg entanglements with wedging back takes, and Tommy was able to counter the wedging back takes with leg locks. And right off the bat, Mateus is able to enter the legs, and Levi quickly counters into the crab ride. And a little later in the match, Mateus is able to work into a deeper leg entanglement, but Levi is able to turn and free his knee from cross ashi and immediately looks to threaten the wedging back take. But the one I want to focus on for the first half of this video is this little sequence here. Now, to lay the foundation for our discussion, I think a good place to start is with Chris Wojcik in his recent podcast on BJJ mental models, where he talked about how when entering the legs, you can do so with either an external or internal entry. Now, kind of the classic example of an external entry is K-guard, because you spin around your opponent's legs to enter the entanglement. Now, an internal entry would be something like the false reap, where instead of trying to rotate around your opponent's legs, you're trying to rotate between your opponent's legs. Now, things start to get much more interesting when we can play these external and internal entries off of one another to create a dilemma for the top player. And the one that's becoming more and more popular is this one here, where we initially use K-guard to threaten an external entry. And as our opponent defends the external entry, we can transfer to an internal entry, using something like the false reap to now spin in between our opponent's legs and enter the entanglement. Now, Mateus tried to do this earlier on in the match, where he starts with K-guard before trying to transfer to the false reap, but it didn't work and they disengaged. But towards the end of the match, they again find themselves in K-guard, and Mateus is trying to off-balance Levi to set up his external entry into the legs. But Levi is making that difficult, so Mateus says, cool, I can't spin around your legs, so I'm going to spin in between your legs. And then Levi dives through into the crab ride, not too different from this reverse De La Riva entry.
So from reverse De La Riva, we go for the knee cut, we keep the leg wide as we see the hips lift, we dive over the top, pull the hips through, extending our leg, sitting up and taking the back.
So back in the day, I think people would pick a side and either fall into the category of someone who enjoys internal or external entries. But nowadays, people are getting very good at combining them. And we're going to continue with this theme as we transition into a conversation about guard passing, because most of their match was spent here in this type of position.
I mean, this has kind of been the position for the entire time.
And we can see Levi fighting to get his forearm frame inside the hip of Mateus. Now, if Mateus doesn't respect this, it can lead to Levi getting deeper into a guard pass. So Mateus converts his cross shoulder post into a straight shoulder post, which allows him to create much more space and high leg over throwing in a lasso, which is a very appropriate guard retention movement. But now we went from a situation where Mateus had his left leg on the outside to it being on the inside. And Levi is someone who likes to bring that outside leg to the inside because it sets up a nice leg drag. So we start with Levi here pressuring forward, and I believe his intention is not to necessarily pass, but just to make Mateus bring his knee shield leg to the inside, because now Levi has the freedom to use his top arm to drag Mateus's knee across, threatening the leg drag. Now, they went through a very similar cycle a few times, but each time Mateus was able to retain his guard and immediately started to threaten K-guard or De La Riva. But as the match went on, I think Mateus got more and more disciplined with this far arm, which allowed him to not recover his guard with his outside leg, but instead recover it with his inside leg, which led to a lot of K-guard. Now, I'm not saying Mateus didn't high leg over later on in the match. All I'm saying is that to me, it looked like Mateus made the adjustment of not primarily relying on the high leg as his guard retention strategy, and instead looked to immediately recover with his inside leg. You can see at the beginning of the match, he's trying to reach for Levi's foot, maybe trying to mess around with a little reverse De La Riva. And when he does try and free his inside leg, Levi is monitoring it, and Mateus is not too persistent. But as the match progresses, Mateus is very quick to recover with his inside leg. Now, I don't know if this was a strategy or a conscious decision on his part, or if I'm just making it up, but it seemed to be a very effective strategy against Levi, and one that Levi actually used himself against Joseph.
Passing it through, going to the back. Very nice. Going on the hips.
Back take attempt.
Jumping up.
Once I got the knee up, I reach my hand to the leg, to the end of the lever, and I pull to get the leg across body. Once you get your opponent's leg across body, this gives you quite a few advantages.
Now, as someone who primarily studies the Danaher crew, my guard has always kind of revolved around bringing my feet to the inside position. But after studying people like Mateus and Levi, what I'm trying to work on from my guard is what Chris talked about and combining external and internal entries into the legs. And from top position, I'm trying to work on different ways of encouraging or forcing the bottom player to bring their feet to the inside, which will allow me to go into outside passes like the leg drag. And if you're interested in studying this as well, I think a great place to start would be that BJJ Mental Models podcast with Chris. And for the guard passing aspect, I think this free YouTube video with Levi is awesome. And we can see examples of people using it successfully in competition.
Anytime this knee comes too far away from his chest, that's where our smash pass options come in.
And we can also see examples of it not working. So I hope you all found this video helpful, and if you're interested in the tool that I use to study jiu-jitsu, it's called the Outlier Database. And when you sign up, you'll get my $97 course on passing half guard for free, as well as access to a Discord with over 1,000 jiu-jitsu nerds just like you. And you'll be able to play around with the first jiu-jitsu AI-powered chatbot, which I didn't even have time to talk about, but I'll be sure to do so in my next video about DeAndre Corby and his 80cc trials run. And as an additional thank you to those of you that are early adopters, we're going to grandfather in the first 2,000 people that sign up. So you have a chance to lock in that $20 rate for the rest of your subscription. Now, last time we did this, the spots filled up very fast, and I imagine it will do so again this time. So if you're interested, be sure to check the link down in the description, and I'll talk to you in the Discord.